Hey, welcome into This Week in Indiana Football, brought to you by Indiana Sports Beat Radio on YouTube Monday through Friday with Jim Coyle. Also on ESPN 97.7 The Ref in Evansville, 89.9 WBRO in Marengo. It is homecoming week in Bloomington as Michigan comes into town following a, dare I say, there's so many adjectives you can use to describe this loss, but I guess the first thing that comes to mind is a brutal loss to Nebraska on the road. Let's go ahead and introduce. I need to introduce who's with me as always before we get into this head first. We've already been talking a lot about this before we got the show started, but we realized as we were chatting before we hit record, like we just need to get all this down and get everything out that we need to say. So without further ado, with me as always, Dustin Schutte from Outsider.com, Mitchell Page, the former walk-on turned scholarship superstar wide receiver, and Joe, the law firm Lincoln. And yeah, with that being said, here we are sitting on homecoming week, which now shares the same weekend as Hoosier hysteria for Indiana basketball, which creates I guess I see what they were going for in hindsight. You want to have this double event with homecoming football going on, but you also are playing a ridiculously tough opponent in Michigan, the number four team ranked in the country. And on top of that, you're coming off what is likely your most important loss of the season. I know that's probably one of the weirdest ways to phrase that, but I say it's the most important loss of the season because it seems like, at least for the time being, it shows the trajectory of where the program is at the moment. And Mitchell, being somebody who is, was once a part of the program, you can back me up on if that seems like kind of an accurate description of everything.
Yeah. When I first got to Indiana, it felt like you were just hoping something good happened during games and kind of praying that maybe the ball would fall our way. And I think from about the second year I was there, maybe third year maybe of Kevin Wilson's tenure, up until maybe the start of last year, you felt like we were trending to where maybe we weren't going to win 10 games every year, but an 8-4 year wasn't out of the question. And now I'm sitting here and you watch, kind of the proof is in the pudding, right? You watch the way that they execute and kind of their toughness or lack thereof. And it just doesn't feel like they're close. There's a lot of things that need to change. I don't know if it's personnel. I don't know if it's coaching. I don't know if it's mentality. I understand LEO, and that's great. We need to love each other, but I would like to see some toughness out of this group because they really haven't shown any. They've gritted out some early wins that I guess was semi-tough, but to get themselves back the way they did in the first place was just really not good. So we're starting to get into the meat of this thing, and on their current trajectory, it's definitely gloomy.
I think for me, you go back and we talked about those first three games getting up to a 3-0 start. And the way they won those games, maybe it generates a little bit of momentum because when your back's up against the wall, they always seem to find a way to win. But then on Saturday against Nebraska, a team that has continually found ways to lose football games, especially one-possession games, this was a game, especially the way it played out in the second half in the fourth quarter with Indiana tied 21-21. That's a game Nebraska has lost for years. And Indiana could not figure out a way. That's incredibly concerning to me. We saw flashes of Jalen Lucas. He had, I think, three carries in the game, and we didn't see him again. That's not smart decision-making from the coaching staff, in my opinion. And I could talk about the offensive line and defensive backfield again, but I feel like I'm a broken record. Those two, the offensive line is one of the worst I've ever watched. And that's not hyperbole, that's fact. And then the defensive backfield was supposed to be your strong suit. That was supposed to be your staple this year. And suddenly, they get torched by Trey Palmer for a 71-yard touchdown in one of the most pivotal moments of the game. That stuff can't happen when you have an All-American back there, when you have guys who have played 3-4 years and have been permanent starters. I don't know what else to add other than there's going to have to be some sort of change made. I don't know if that's in the season or after the season, but they've got to do something, because what we've seen the last 2 years and really the entire time under Tom Allen with the offensive line is inexcusable.
Yeah, it's amazing. I don't remember. I think I talked about it last time. But when you look at the recruiting, quote unquote, rankings since Tom Allen has been there, all they've done is gone up and up and up and up and up. Quality of player is better, supposedly. And this is truly one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen. They're getting on every pass drop. You can say Basilak's inaccurate. You can say whatever you want. But when you're standing back there at quarterback and you don't feel comfortable setting your feet and everything is rushed. We talk a lot about golf. When you're rushed in golf, the ball starts going everywhere. It's the same thing in football. When you've got 3 linemen that are getting walked back, where they're not stunting, no one is doing any tricks. They're running right through your face for 5 straight games, and it's happened in every game, particularly on the right side. They put their hand in the ground and run right through your face and walk you back into the quarterback's lap. He can see that whole thing. If that was happening from the left side, that's the blind side is still – the hits from there are scary, but he can see you getting walked back as he's going through his drop. That's going to hurry everything up. He's going to become inaccurate, and then you get behind chains. And, I mean, it's one of the worst groups I've seen, and as you said, maybe ever in college football. They are really, really bad, and hopefully a miracle.
Here's what – this is the point I want to make with Mitchell bringing up recruiting rankings, and I think I can make this point. I don't know if you guys remember 2015. Michigan State was undefeated. They went to the college football playoff. They got whacked, or I think they lost 1 game that year. Then they went to the college football playoff, got waxed by Alabama. Mark D'Antonio then made an effort to get better players into Michigan State, and they were able to get some of their best recruiting classes the year or two after. Like that 2016 class was really good. They were never the same team because those guys didn't have the same attitude as the kind of guys that got them to 12-1 and a Big Ten championship. They just thought they were good, could show up, and they were going to be the difference makers. And I think Mark D'Antonio did that too. I feel like that's what we're seeing a little bit. I think we're starting to see some of these 4-star guys show up on campus, be big man on campus, big man in the recruiting rankings, and all of a sudden I don't know a better way to phrase this, and it sounds dumb coming from a 5'8" white guy, but they don't have that dog in them, like that kind of thing. I just don't see that same sort of heart. Otherwise, how can you have better off recruiting rankings wise, better offensive linemen and be this bad? How could you have guys that are experienced? I feel like for the last 3 or 4 years, we've talked about, well, Indiana will be at least a little bit more experienced on the offensive line, but they've somehow gotten worse. It makes no sense. So they're going to have to change their mindset when it comes to recruiting. And I don't know if this is where I was getting to the personnel. I don't know if that's coming from the position coach. I don't know if that's coming from just Tom Allen looking at the star rankings. I don't know where that's coming from, but you can't have these classes be this talented and then be that bad at any position group. You would think Nebraska's defense isn't good. It's the last in the Big Ten in every statistical category. And as Mitchell said, they just got walked all over the entire game.
Yeah. I do want to transition because we talk about recruiting rankings. It's kind of interesting. You have these guys on the offensive line that are, I'm not sure this offensive line was better than the one I had at Guerin, to be totally honest with you. And Guerin is a 1A school. I guess now they're 3A. But when I started, they're a 1A school in Indiana. They weren't, at least there was some fight. Right. But then you transition to a true freshman. The best player on the team is Dustin McCullough.
Yes.
It's not close. He is miles better than probably everyone. Cam Jones, I think, is up there. And Cam Camper's shown flashes. But Dustin McCullough, true freshman, supposedly needs to put some weight on. And he's playing on the line of scrimmage, shedding blocks from Big Ten linemen that are actually, blocking like Big Ten linemen and making plays behind the line of scrimmage, chasing plays down. That's been really one of the brightest spots for Indiana football in the past 10 years, how good that kid is.
And here's the problem. And Joe, I'll let you speak too, because I know you haven't said anything yet. But the biggest issue with that in today's era of NIL and transfer portal is if Indiana, what do you say?
He's got no reason to
stay. He doesn't win. He's got a dad at Notre Dame.
Well, the problem is they're worse than Indiana.
Well, there's no way to tell that unless you play each other. But at the same time, Dasan McCullough, I mean, he does seem like he's loyal. For one instance, he could have left. He was the heart and soul of this major recruiting class. He could have easily decommitted and gone to Notre Dame in the first place. But he probably knew that he was going to get on the field early here at Indiana. He can show how good he is, as he's already done. And come this offseason, he'll have way more options to be able to go and be a starter somewhere else if Indiana doesn't work out this season, which right now it's obviously not trending in that direction.
Yeah, I just pray to God that doesn't happen. I mean, he's been an absolute delight. And there's not a lot of reasons for people to watch the offense, but, man, he's almost appointment television how good that kid is as a true freshman.
Joe, what was your perspective as a student?
Well, I kind of do want to talk about Dasan McCullough a little bit as we're kind of on that topic right now. He's a stud. Being down on the field and watching that guy is unreal. His length, I didn't know how big he was until I saw him in person. This dude, say that again?
Is he 6'4"? Like how tall is he?
He might be like 6'3", 6'4", but he's also, if he puts on a little muscle mass, this kid could be unstoppable. I mean, it's unreal. His length and his range. I mean, he tracks anybody down he wants to, and that's pretty cool to see at IU because that kind of talent doesn't come through here every day. So,
Mitchell, how old was he and his brothers whenever you were on?
They were little kids, man. They were little kids running around. It was when I remember when his brother first was a senior in high school. That was shocking to me. And now Day, the youngest one, he's a 4.5-star recruit, isn't he?
I think he's committed to Cincinnati right now. Yep.
Yeah, but he's going to be going to college. It's crazy. And that's just, I mean, we can talk about getting old, but I mean, these kids are, if they're anything like their mom and their dad, they're going to be athletic, competitive. I mean, Dylan McCullough is one of my favorite people in the world. I can't imagine the kind of coaching and mentorship that he was giving these kids because they play with a different level of confidence. I think their passion is through the roof. I mean, I literally could watch that kid play. He is appointment television for me.
What's crazy is that none of his kids are running backs, and they're all defensive players, and he coaches running backs.
He coaches running backs like they're playing defense. That's what I love so much about him. Like he was always talking about forcing contact, being you are the train. They're just in the way. And I think something that Indiana's missing big time, particularly with, I don't want to call anybody out by name, but you don't get any just hand the ball off. Okay, the line's getting blown up. Stick your head in there and get 2 yards. There's a lot of dancing in the backfield, and you get to 2nd and 12, and then it's a passing down, and that makes it harder on the linemen. It just is they're missing a Jordan Howard-esque back that gets you 3 when it should have been a 1-yard loss. It's really that value or that part of playing running back is so undervalued because it keeps the offense on schedule. Indiana hasn't been on schedule maybe 2 or 3 drives all season where you don't get behind chains or shoot yourself in the foot with a big penalty. It's really hard to play offense like that. So
I'm starting to realize that I don't even think it's like a first half, second half issue.
No.
I think this offense is just so streaky, and that you saw it in the Nebraska game whenever they made it 21-21. They get really hot, and then these moments, whether it's the end of a quarter or a half or just something ridiculous happening, that gets, like you said, gets everything off schedule, they can't find that rhythm again. But once they find it, they have it for a certain period of time. They have to be able to get out of that little mode that they get in and turn it on in other times during the game instead of just those small little windows that they're doing.
I'd be curious how many times in the game they had 2nd and 12. I don't know how easy that is to look up, but it felt like every time we got the ball, it was 2nd and 12. And then you don't have plays that are for 12 yards. You're trying to get half, and then you've got a 3rd and medium to 3rd and long. And over the course of over the entire country, the percentage of that is only like 33%, maybe 35, 40%. It's not a high percentage 3rd down. You're just getting off behind schedule. When they can complete their first pass of a drive or get 4 yards on a run, they're getting field goals. They're getting touchdowns. They're moving the ball. But they're just always behind schedule on 2nd and 12. If we can look that up, I'd be curious.
I'm going for it right now.
While he's doing that, I wanted to make this comment earlier, but it goes back to the disappointment level of this game. Myself, and I won't say anyone else unless they want to come forward. Full disclosure, hours before this game started, I had convinced myself, even though on this podcast I predicted Indiana to win by 7, I had convinced myself that Indiana could very well win this game by a score of like 52-3.
Yeah.
Just thinking that was their full potential. And going back to something that Don Fisher actually said on Indiana Sports Beat yesterday, he doesn't think that Indiana has played to their full potential, which I agree with. I don't know that we will see their full potential. I don't think their full potential is something like 52-3 against Nebraska anymore. Who knows? But the fact that we had convinced ourselves of something like that, and all of that was based on what had happened in the days before. We discussed it last week with the coach, the former Nebraska assistant, who made the comments calling Tom Allen a clown and how that would get back to the team, similar to how the Fred Glass thing did it wasn't Fred Glass, but the Nebraska athletic director and Scott Frost from a few years ago thought would have a similar effect on this Indiana team. And what do you know? Indiana comes out on the very first play of the game, and they're not ready, and they have to call a timeout so they don't get a delay of game penalty.
So that Indiana had 15 possessions. I had to make an adjustment to your question, Mitchell, because they didn't have 2nd and 12 or longer very often, but 2nd and 10 or longer
12
was 10 times. 10 times on 15 possessions. I'm looking through now. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 3-and-outs, and then the 2 drives at the end of the game were 4-and-outs. So that's what is that? 9 of your 15 possessions stalled without getting another set of downs.
Yeah, and that's actually less than I would have guessed. But it goes when you're off schedule. That's the whole offense that I played in. This is sometimes on this podcast I go from Mitchell, the former player, to Mitchell, just the diehard Indiana football fan. Most of the time, I live in the world of diehard Indiana football fan. I just want them to win every game. That's it. That's the only reason I get all worked up. I just want them to win every game. But this is going to come Mitchell, former player. I played in an offense that was all about staying on schedule. I bet when you looked at our drives, if we didn't get 2 yards at least on the first play, there was a good chance we were going to go 3 and out. Maybe not over 50% or 9 times out of 10, but it's all about staying on schedule. When you get 3 yards or you get 4 yards or you can get a bigger play for 8, now the defense gets on their heels, and that's when you start to see the Walt Bell high-tempo offense. You can't just say, play faster when your first play goes nowhere. Now you've got to kind of regroup. Once you get the first ball rolling, now it gets a lot easier. The ball in motion stays in motion, but you have to get the thing in motion. And that's just something that Indiana's really struggled with all year, is getting that first play of a drive to be positive. Even if it's only 1 yard. You're off tackle, you're moving. But it seems like they're always just running right into the D lineman's face, Connor Bazelak is running for his life. I mean, that just feels like kind of what it is. I do want to go back to something you said. I thought taking the timeout on the first play of the game. This is Mitchell, the former player again. I'm sure they do this. Usually there's a script of like 10 plays that you're literally running no matter what, that you've gone through the quarterback and the offensive coordinator all week. They sit and talk about, okay, what do you like first? What do you like versus – and there's little tweaks. If we get this coverage, we're going to get this. But the plays are, for the most part, the same. And there's a 10-play script. Even if you go 3 and out 3 times, you're still going to be on that script. So I don't know how you send guys out on the field on the first play of the game without knowing – I mean, you should be able to go out there and run that play in your sleep. You've done it 55 times during the week. That was one of the most shocking things of the whole game. It's not – I mean, I'm sure Nebraska is loud, but when you're not in the closed end of Ohio State, Nebraska's not good. So they're not going to be jumping like crazy. They just got beat by 50 by Oklahoma.
And I can't recall go ahead, finish your point. I didn't know.
Yeah, sorry. When you do something like that, you bring the crowd into the game because now they start to feel like they have an impact. They have no reason to be in the game. The only reason they sell it out is because they've sold it out for 60 straight years. Those people don't want to be in that game. Their team is not good. India should smash them. But now all of a sudden you give some life, and the players are like, all right. And you haven't even snapped the ball yet. It was amazing. I hadn't seen that before. Maybe 5 years, I guess. I hadn't seen that.
I can't recall off the top of my head, but I do think it may have been, I don't know if it was last year and I do think it was during the Tom Allen era so far. There was one other instance. It wasn't at the beginning of a game, but I do believe it was at the beginning of a half where the exact same thing happened. I don't know if it was because of delay a game, but they called timeout without even running a play. I wish I could recall who that was against and when, but I know that's not the first time that's happened.
I'd have to go back and rewatch that first play to see, or that non-play or whatever. Do you remember it happened at Penn State when Michigan played at Penn State a few years ago, maybe 2017 or 18? Yes. This was what I was going to say. It looked like in that game, Michigan couldn't get the snap count. It looked like they couldn't hear like that. Yes. But I'd have to go back and watch. But it looked to me like Indiana was confused as to who was supposed to be on the field. Like they weren't ready and they didn't snap the ball. Like they just lingered out there and were like, you know what, we're going to give ourselves an extra minute to figure this thing out.
Yeah, they look like they could talk like we're talking right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that Michigan Penn State clip is nuts.
Mm-hmm.
It gives me goosebumps thinking about it. It looks like the center couldn't get, and I'm sure they were on silent count too. So that was just a bananas play. That's excusable. This one, inexcusable. And I don't know who that's on, whether it's quarterback, offensive line not communicating, wide receivers, OC, head coach. I think it's kind of the whole gamut. You just can't. You can't have that. It's a Big Ten. Be prepared. I've said a lot today.
If I can.
I've got a lot to say. I'm sorry I'm dominating this thing. I'm going to be quiet for a little bit.
Mitchell just said something that I've been thinking about since we started this. It's the Big Ten. Figure it out. I don't think Indiana's looked like a Big Ten football team the entire season. Not in the Illinois game, not in any of the games after that either, even though, how did they get the win against Illinois? I don't know at this point because Illinois looks like a problem in the Big Ten right now. And, I don't know how we pulled that one out, but the Hoosiers came out on top week 1. It's a shock. So, but regardless, not looking like a Big Ten football team at all. There's none of the grittiness. There's none of the drive. There's none of the offensive line play isn't there, which is a mainstay in this conference. And it just doesn't look like a team that belongs at this point. I don't know if they're going to be able to get it together because there haven't even been signs of life on that wavelength of the Big Ten. So I don't know what they need to do to figure it out at this point. I don't know if there's anything the coaches can do. There's obviously things they can try to do, but a team is a team, and unless they can figure out a different sort of formula, I feel like they're just going to be running around in circles. So we're going to have to see what Michigan brings. We obviously know that Michigan one of, if not the best teams in the Big Ten. So they're going to get the best of the Big Ten this week. And I don't know what Indiana's going to bring, but it could get embarrassing. I don't know. We'll see.
Let's go ahead and set the stage for this week then, since we're sort of transitioning into that. I mentioned at the very beginning of the show, it's homecoming week. It now not coincidentally, I know it was done on purpose. It coincides with Hoosier Hysteria for Indiana basketball. You have Big Noon Kickoff, which is coming to town. I don't know why. I mean, obviously it's for Michigan. They're not here because Indiana is some team that's primed to upset the Wolverines or anything like that. But I mean, I don't know what I'm trying to find a silver lining, and I was trying to find it while you were kind of setting this up, Joe. But there's a way that it seems like the atmosphere can almost be sleepy enough for Michigan that maybe under the right circumstances, Indiana can stay in this game for a little while, make it interesting. Here's how I see it going down, honestly, in my head. I think through the first 2.5 to 3 quarters, this could be a 7 to 14 point game. And then like clockwork against Michigan or Ohio State. And this has nothing to do with Indiana being good. I want to go ahead and mention this. This is more just about the fact that Michigan doesn't want to be in. It's like kind of like overlooking this. They just got a big win against Iowa. I don't know who they play next week, but they could be potentially one of you, if you can, give me who Michigan plays next week. They may even have a bye. Who knows? But if Indiana, I could see them being in this for, like I said, 2.5, 3 quarters, but then like clockwork, Michigan can pull ahead and win this by 25, 28 points is the way that I see this going down.
They've got Penn State coming to town for what it's worth.
Well, so there you go. You have the big win against Iowa last week. You have this silly little game against Indiana sandwiched in between on Indiana's homecoming. I don't know what Indiana's record on homecoming games is. I feel like it's not good. I know they got
always schedule Michigan or Ohio State. Always. It is
Wasn't
always
Rutgers last year.
I don't know. That's going to totally kill my argument. But it felt like when I was there, it was always Michigan or Ohio State. Always for homecoming. So we didn't win a lot of those games. In my time, 0-10. So
I really don't think. I mean, I'm sure there are some. I really can't recall the last time Indiana won a homecoming game, and I don't know who.
We didn't get waxed like they did last year. Didn't they lose like 38-3 on homecoming last year?
If it was Rutgers, yes.
Oh gosh. Okay. You said.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm gonna.
Okay, this is where my counter to John comes in. I understand what you're saying about this sleepy environment. I get that. Mitchell's talked about the unique home field advantage with Northwestern. I would maybe get on board with that a little bit if Indiana's defense was a little bit better and Michigan was a passing team. Michigan will run it down your throat. And I feel like throwing the football takes a lot of timing. And I'm not saying blocking doesn't take timing, but if you've watched Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum, anybody else in the Michigan backfield, like they hit holes quickly. They can explode for 40 yards. Like I think Michigan will hit 3 big time, like 50-yard runs right out the gate, and it'll be over before you blink. Because every year that Michigan has played like a big game, I'd have to go back, but a few years ago they were playing really good football. Indiana was playing pretty good football, and Michigan had Ohio State 2 weeks ago, and we thought, oh, maybe Michigan overlooks this game and it gives Indiana a shot. No, Michigan came out and waxed Indiana at home at Memorial Stadium. I just don't think – I think if it was Ohio State, I might see it because, like I said, passing takes timing. It takes a little – so you might take a little bit of time if you come out and you're slow. But when you run the football, I mean, it's just blocking and hitting the hole, and Michigan does that so well. I don't think Indiana's defense has a chance.
Joe?
I mean, we're all just waiting.
What's there to say except Michigan looks like a collegiate football team at this point, and Indiana has the offensive line of a lesser high school football team, according to Mitchell.
Catholic.
So That's really, yeah, right, Garrett. Yeah, it's all you need to know because they're just monsters out there. If you watch Michigan play, I mean, not maybe the last couple of years, but last year and this year in the Big Ten, they've just been all over the place. And it's not really been the other team's decision as to what they're going to do against it. They just have to adjust to it. And that's on both sides of the ball. I think Dustin hit it right on the head. Their running game is going to be unbelievable against whoever they play because they have the offensive line to lead it. And then Corum, I think, probably is the best running back in the Big Ten. So I don't think you can really stop that.
Indiana already beat the best running back in the Big Ten. That kid from Illinois.
I will go there. I agree with that. He's really exceptional. But he also did roll over IU in the first. So that maybe not a great sign going this game. But if and this is a big if IU can come up with a couple big defensive plays, maybe some turnovers, and the offense can be okay, they can stay in this game in the first half. I think Michigan runs away with it in the second half. So they just have to try and keep it close, and that's what they can do right now.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to start with saying this is a problem. This is going to be a problem. There are a lot of problems that Indiana is facing as they begin their week of practice. They probably had their first full go day today, really hitting the film. They're going to see this. They got a lot of guys. They are the Monstars from Space Jam. They are huge. They're fast. They can run, jump, the whole deal, and they're really well coached. The only reason – I'm not going to say what my prediction is until later. I've kind of hinted where I think Indiana stands. But the only reason that I think Indiana may be able to do a couple things is actually the opposite of what you said, Dustin. I think because Michigan's really a run-dominated team, Indiana's really only strength that they've shown outside of the kid from Illinois that is just a monster. He had a great game, and I think there was just some rust that Indiana was knocking off. I think their front seven has played really well. They've given up some big passes, and I think they'll continue to do that. But I don't see Michigan having 300 yards rushing, maybe 200, and maybe it starts to wear on them eventually. But where this is a problem is Indiana will really, really struggle to score because you've got guys at Michigan at every position on defense, where Nebraska, I mean, they were, you said it, the worst statistical defense in the Big Ten. And I really don't think it was close. I was doing some research. I think they were, like, way worse.
Yes, they were.
And – I mean, you score 14 points. You really don't have that much offense going. You score one on defense that was a great blitz. That was an old school Tom Allen blitz that we hadn't seen in a long time. I was excited by that one. But I think Indiana, they may be able to create a little sense of urgency out of Michigan, and then we'll finally see how good that quarterback really is. I think he's really good, the McCarthy kid, and I think Indiana will really struggle once they figure that out. But I mean, Indiana's strength is their front seven, so we'll see. They're gonna have to go to war. It'll be a war because they are big and fast, man.
Did you guys watch that Michigan-Iowa game? By the way,
yeah.
Okay, so did you the final or I think it was actually technically Iowa's second to last possession. I don't know if you saw that, but I feel like that could be an outline of what you're going to see this week. Spencer Petras got sacked twice by Mike Morris, Taylor Upshaw, and then I think he almost got sacked. I think technically he threw the ball before the play ended, but he basically got sacked on the final. They got 3 sacks, and Indiana can't run the football, and Michigan knows that. It could get so ugly.
Yeah, you're not You're not going to see any stunts. You're not going to get any tricky blitzes. They're going to play vanilla coverage behind it. They're going to probably press. I would guess you get a bunch of man, make the receivers beat you. Man routes take a little bit longer than finding zones. It's a lot harder to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands in man. You're going to get a lot of man coverage, maybe likely some cover one with a deep safety, maybe cover 0, where they just light them up and say, I dare you to beat me through the air, and they don't even worry about getting beat deep. They've got no deep safeties. They're bringing, depending on how many guys we got, 8 guys, 7 guys every play with their ears pinned back. They're not going to be crossing. None of that. Straight at your face, because that's worked for everybody else, and it's really on Indiana. How are you going to respond to that kind of pressure? That's what Michigan's been really good at for a long time. They've played that same coverage forever, and I think we're going to get a whole big dose of the press man coverage. I dare you to beat me.
This may not be the easiest question to answer, but before we put this Michigan preview to bed and kind of move forward and wrap up with pick'ems,
before we finish this pre-death eulogy of some sort.
Well, this is why I'm trying to reverse the fortunes for a second. If we can, this might not be the easiest thing to do, but can everyone say one thing? If remember, this is college football. This isn't the NFL. Nothing is impossible, okay? If Indiana pulls off this upset, what is one thing that absolutely has to happen? I don't even think I have my answer for this yet. So if anyone else can beat me to this, I was trying to formulate it while Mitchell was talking, but I don't really know if I have an answer yet.
How many buses do you think they take? 4? I think how many buses?
How many buses? Okay.
I think all the buses got to take like a really wrong turn.
I was on that same wavelength. I was going to say, if you guys watched the Penn State Northwestern game when it was just pouring rain and neither team could hang on to the football, and Penn State was probably 40 points better than Northwestern, but because it was so sloppy, they only won by 10. That maybe gives Indiana a better chance.
The problem is it's on turf.
Well, it still makes it slippery.
No, you get the grip. That was all sloppy and muddy and crappy. The turf is still fast.
I don't know if there's anything. You could say a lot of stuff. You could say the offensive line needs to get better. You could say scheming, but it's like we've seen the same thing through 6 games. I don't know what is going to change, or 5 games, excuse me.
I'm going to keep this really basic because, like I said, it's just one thing. This is one thing that I think absolutely has to happen if Indiana wins, and I think they need to score first. It's just that simple. Get on the board first, and it has to be a touchdown, not a field goal. If you can make it 7-0, you're obviously ahead. You don't have to score anymore. I'm not saying that's not going to happen. Like I said, I should
then hope the lights go out.
Simple. Lights go out. Like I said,
I'm doing
that's
another
the only thing. That's it. Score first.
If Indiana scores first, I'm doing the next podcast without a shirt.
There we go.
That's my shirt.
All right. No shirt with a helmet.
Yeah,
right.
With the helmet. Nobody wants.
That'd be great.
It's been a while since I played.
You just think 2 years ago. I mean, yes, it was 2020, and you could say whatever you want about why that season happened the way that it did. But Indiana won this game by 14 points at home in front of nobody. 38-24? Had 2 or 3 interceptions. That was the game where, and it, like I said, it was in odd circumstances. The stadium was pumping in artificial noise, and I can't remember who the quarterback was at the time, but they kept getting false starts. It was false start after false start after false start. Or no, it was offsides. Indiana was getting Michigan to jump off sides and kept getting free plays.
Yes. They scored like 2 or 3 touchdowns on free plays. The one I remember was to the kid that transferred as you're watching the game, the near sideline going towards the north end zone. What was that kid's name?
Transferred for Indiana?
He's from Indiana. He left Indiana. Oh,
and
man.
Michigan?
No. IU scored on this play.
And he's not with Indiana anymore.
Yeah, as a free play. I think the kid was a freshman, went up and mossed him.
Why can't I think of who that is? Was it Dominic Booth?
No.
How long ago was that? Why does that name sound?
Dominic was with me.
Man,
That guy was
He's out there with his 8th year of eligibility.
If he was still
Who was
playing,
it?
Coach Wilson should not have got fired. But I digress. What was that
Joe
kid's
Doolittle. The only reason I tell Joe is because y'all will hear me typing if I start looking up. I feel like that's very annoying.
They won by 17, 38 to
I thought it was 14.
They waxed them. All right, hold on. This is bad podcasting for the people that are listening, but we're gonna wait because I got.
That's okay. I think
Miles
people,
Marshall.
and you'll correct me if I'm
Miles
wrong.
Marshall.
If you're a listener, you can be honest with this, or a viewer. Do you like the rawness of this? If like, I think it's fun sometimes if you just do things on the fly because this is honest. You know, we can call it radio, you can call it whatever you want, YouTube, podcasting, whatever. I always thought, and I won't talk about this for very long. I always thought that you had to have like a written plan out for doing a show, and for certain kinds of shows you do. But whenever you're having a discussion, I think it's better that when things are organic like this.
Yeah, basically, if you really like it, tell us. If you don't tell us. But keep listening.
I'm gonna find who got
Suck
that
it up.
touchdown.
All right, let's do the pick'ems, man. Let's do the pick'ems. It's 9:00.
It's almost.
It's 9:00.
Oh my gosh, who's the guy?
We already found
Miles Marshall. Miles
Yeah.
Marshall.
We said that.
That's
We
what I
said that
said.
10 minutes
I missed you say his name.
Yeah, you were busy. You were busy telling the listeners to tell us that we suck.
Oh, I didn't hear anybody say the name while I was doing that. Where did he transfer to?
I don't
Miami,
know.
Ohio.
Miami
really?
of Ohio. He went to a group
Yeah.
of 5. He was getting snaps in Indiana. Why would you go to a group of 5 school?
He's the best
Maybe
player on our
he's-
team.
To each his own, but
I mean, let me just tell you, Miami of Ohio they just beat Northwestern. They put up a fight against Kentucky. I think they put up a fight against someone else too.
No
I mean,
all right, yeah. Let's go and get into pick'ems. We've got, thankfully, we're at the point like last week with only 7 games to choose from or go into. But first up, this Friday, and we'll do it the way we did. We'll just go Dustin, Joe, Mitchell, and myself like we did last week. Nebraska at Rutgers with Nebraska as the 3-point favorite. Over under is 48.5. Mr. Shooty, what do you have?
I think this is an interesting game. I think that the way that it ended at Ohio State with Greg Schiano and Ryan Day yelling at each other kind of sparked a fire for Schiano. So I think he wants to prove a point. I'm going to pick Rutgers to win this game and get back to 4-2 on the year.
Mr. Joe Lincoln. Oh, hold on.
I'm
I forgot to ask. What's the standings after last week? That's my bad. What were last week's results?
No problem. So still in first place, but losing a little bit of his lead. Mitchell, second now. Dustin stays at second. Leapfrogging me once again into third place is John, and then I am pulling up the rear. So
A lot of time. I
lot of
got
time.
a feeling I'm starting to bet with my heart instead of my head. So that generally leads to the downfall.
Poor decision making.
Yeah, so just wait. Just bide your time.
All right.
All right.
With that being said, Joe, who's your pick for Nebraska? Rutgers?
keeping that in mind, I'm going to go the other direction. I think Nebraska rides the momentum. Mickey Joseph with that was his first win as interim, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
So he'll keep going with that. I think Rutgers, unless the Chop House is up and running again, I think they
Church of Chop.
Church of Chop. As much as I love that name, I have Nebraska covering. So I don't know. We'll see, but I like the Huskers in that one.
Rutgers to cover. End of story.
Yeah, Mitchell, remember, he is anti-Nebraska all season, if you don't.
Even more now. They took any little bit of happiness that I had and just threw it in the garbage can.
Joe, I'm in the same boat as you. I think Nebraska for the rest of the season is going to play loose because, I mean, it's not like they don't have anything to play for. I mean, they're tied for first in the Big Ten West because every team is 1-1 in there right now, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. So I'm not saying Nebraska
all but one team, and their
Who's the
team
other one?
they just fired their coach.
Oh yeah,
Go.
Wisconsin. all but one team is in first place for the Big Ten West. So Nebraska can play loose. They like obviously the mindset after Scott Frost was this season is a sham. And so now without the expectations, I feel like this team is going to end up surprising people throughout the rest of the year. And I think they win their second straight against Rutgers and covering the spread of 3, by the way. All right, moving forward. Next up, we have Wisconsin at I'm going in order of what is it? Best spread to worst. I don't know what you want to call this, but biggest spread to smallest spread. I guess that's the best way to say it. Number 3, Ohio State at Michigan State, 26.5 points for Ohio State and a 64-point over/under. And the only reason I didn't do Nebraska Rutgers in that order is because they play on Friday, but. Dustin, what do you got for OSU MSU?
I'm going to take Ohio State and the points on this because Michigan State's defense is really bad, especially against the pass. Ohio State throws the ball extremely well. Their defense is still playing well. Michigan State might be able to put together a few drives, but I think that Ohio State's going to continue to roll.
What you got, Joe?
Yeah. Not a big surprise here. I have Ohio State covering. Michigan State is in shambles right now. I don't think they can get it together, so Buckeyes are going to roll.
Is this in East Lansing or Columbus?
It is.
East Lansing.
I got the Spartans to cover.
All right.
I don't know. I don't really have a reason. I just said, I don't know why. I really like that stadium, and I think they play well there. I don't think that's really based on anything. That's just a feeling. And I think they're going to play okay on Saturday. I don't think they win, but like 21 would be my guess.
I feel like Michigan State is suffering from a similar downfall that Indiana experienced last year because, they had their high last season where they were predicted to be completely horrible. They ended up winning 10 games, and Mel Tucker gets this ridiculous contract. And now look what's going down in East Lansing. I think Ohio State wins this and covers as well. All right, next game, Wisconsin at Northwestern. Wisconsin, 10-point favorites. Over-under is 44.5. Dustin.
Yeah, two teams that really stink, at least right now. Wisconsin just fired their head coach. The game's at Northwestern.
All fire coach in midseason. It's the new thing to do.
I guess so, especially when that dude won 3 Big Ten West titles.
Exact same record as Bo Pelini. I mentioned that on Indiana Sports Beat for those of you who listen.
1 win shy of passing Brett Bielema or tying Brett Bielema. I can't remember.
As you lose to Brett Bielema.
I don't like that 10 number. I think this is going to be a closer game because of all the change Wisconsin went through. Maybe Northwestern can keep it sloppy. I think Northwestern covers that 10-point spread.
What you got, Joe?
This one was tough for me too. I was looking at this earlier, and I'm thinking to myself, is Wisconsin really that bad of a football team, or is there something else going on that's affecting that program in a different way? Because you look at them last year as compared to where they are right now, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. They just fired Paul Chryst. They've got some new blood in there at the head coach position. I don't know if that makes a difference, but here's what made the change for me. Northwestern is really, really, really bad. So I'm going to go ahead and cover. So I think the Badgers take this one by 10 or more.
I have breaking news.
Okay.
Breaking news. What do you have?
Are you guys baseball fans?
Yes.
No.
Okay, that makes 3 no's. But for Saturday, this is big breaking news. Saturday, we will no longer be subjected to the split screen of Aaron Judge.
Oh, yeah, I do hate that.
Home run number 62. So shout out Mr. Judge. That's amazing. But I'm going to be able to just watch the game that I'm trying to watch as opposed to the 4-pitch walk that I've been watching for the past week.
Somebody ran it or something because I didn't get an update.
It's on Twitter.
Somebody ran his statistics of what his numbers are when ESPN cuts in. I can't remember. I was like 2 of 7 with 3 walks. I don't remember what it was specifically, but somebody went down the statistical rabbit hole of that. It was pretty funny.
Aaron Judge Cam.
Yeah, it's
all right, so what's your Northwestern Wisconsin pick?
Badgers. Period.
I'll tell you what, and I won't get too specific about this, hopefully, but I think Wisconsin is doing a similar thing to what Indiana did when they elevated Tom Allen. I think they really they're worried that Jim Leonard's going to get poached, and so they found a reason to get rid of Paul Chryst a little earlier than maybe they wanted to or originally thought they might have. And so I think this is actually the beginning potentially of the Jim Leonard area of Wisconsin. Maybe I'm completely full of it, but I think they're going to be fired up and ready. And much like Joe said, Northwestern, this may be one of the worst Northwestern teams that Pat Fitzgerald has ever fielded somehow. I think Wisconsin covers this spread. So there you go. All right. What is my next game on the docket? We got 3 left. Oh, yeah, we're going to go ahead and jump into Indiana and Michigan because the 2 after I have given co-Big Ten Game of the Week honors to, just because they were both very difficult for me to decide on. And they both have 4 teams that have quite a bit to play for actually right now. So Michigan, number 4, Michigan at Indiana. Michigan's favored by 22 currently with the over-under set at 59. And this one we give scores for. So, Dustin, what do you have for this one?
I think this could get ugly. That first half in Indiana, Cincinnati, I think that could be representative of what we see in both halves in this game. I'm going to go, I don't know, Michigan 53, Indiana 10.
53-10, man. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go and butt in real quick. I think if that score happens, or any score related to that, I think you have to make it. And I'm not saying fire Tom Allen, but Tom Allen needs to do something. He needs to hold people accountable. Like I think it's safe to say that we're living in a day and age where it's acceptable to fire coaches mid-season. That's just the way things are. And I know that kind of goes against what Tom Allen's about, so maybe it won't happen. But if you want Indiana to compete, if you want to continue to be the head guy of this program, if results like that happen, you've got to be willing to do what's absolutely necessary to keep that from happening in the future. So I'll get off that soapbox for now. We might save that discussion for next week if that happens. But Joe, what do you got?
I have Indiana staying in this game in the first half somehow. The one game of the year that they decide to play in the first half.
They played in the first half of the Illinois game. See, a lot of people don't realize they played good in the first half of that game and bad in the second half, except for that last drive.
Right, yeah. Okay. I wouldn't say they played good in the first half. And I'd say, honestly, that was the first game of the season. So Illinois – actually, that was the second game for Illinois, now that I'm thinking back to it. So, anyways, I think they do play well in the first half, keep up a little bit. And like I said earlier, Michigan pulls away in the second half. I have Michigan 37-17.
Okay. What's the spread in this game? I didn't
22.
Okay. Interesting. So I referenced – this may surprise you guys. I referenced Michigan as the Monstars early in the podcast. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Space Jam. The Monstars get out to a big lead, John. Not so fast, my friend. Bill Murray comes out and changes everything. And I think Michael Jordan, a.k.a. Connor Bazelak, stretches his arm from half court and a Hail Mary win for Indiana, 41-38. That's what I think.
So you think the buses are taking a different turn then and not –
the buses are getting there on time, and Bugs Bunny is going to be dripping in heat. We're going to be feeling good. 41-38 Hail Mary. That's what I'm predicting.
Wow. What fans are in the stands will storm the field? I don't know what the –
There won't be a lot.
Maybe we
Even
shouldn't
if
discuss this, but what's going to be the Indiana to Michigan fan ratio? They obviously always travel well to Memorial Stadium.
Yeah, it's not a great photo op for the Indiana Athletic Department. They would always hype up the Ohio State game. All the pictures in the building are from Ohio State week.
You can't really see right now, but
That's Ohio State game.
That's an Ohio State game.
100%.
And another fun fact, 2 fun facts actually about this. Obviously, it looks really red because both schools have red red
100%.
colors. But the score in this game, Ohio State is winning currently. I believe
he's going to look.
It's 10-6 Ohio State in the score.
Not too bad. But yeah, that's every day that I walked in that building, they had big pictures of the stadium, full crowds, all on the walls. Every game was against Ohio State. That was the photo opportunity, man.
But it's the only time not the only time it's sold out, but one of the only times it's sold out where it looks like you may have a majority when you really don't. But it's because the teams have the same colors.
Good thing they weren't playing the sound. You could hear OHIO chanting around the stadium for 4 straight quarters.
All right. With that being said, I guess I need to give my prediction. I already described how I thought the game was going to go down earlier, with Indiana finding a way to stay in this for 2.5 to 3 quarters. But I do think the ultimate result is going to be a Michigan victory, 42-17, which does have them covering by 3, just to throw that out there. So it's kind of right where it could be, not the over-under necessarily. And honestly, Indiana scoring 17 points, that seems like I'm being pretty generous on Indiana.
It does.
I gave him 41.
That is very true.
Dude, the Indiana faithful, Indiana has, I would say, the best fans in the world. There's just not a lot of them.
Yeah, that's true.
But the best fans in the world, they're going to live. They're going to bask this weekend. That noon kick, big noon kickoff, stun the country, shock the world, baby. All 12 of them.
All right, let's get to our Big Ten games of the week.
Me included.
Co-Big Ten games of the week. First one, Purdue at Maryland. Maryland is a 3-point favorite at home with a 59.5 point over-under. Dustin.
Yeah, I said I'd like to know Jeff Brom's record at Purdue after they beat a ranked team because I feel like it's not very good. I'd like this game better for Purdue if it was at home, but it's at Maryland. Maryland is playing really well. Their only loss was to 7 points against Michigan on the road. I think Maryland wins. Let's say Maryland wins, but I'll take Purdue to cover. I think it's going to be like a 1 or 2 point game.
Okay.
Joseph.
Yeah, I really struggled picking this game. I looked at it. I looked at advanced analytics. Didn't really give me much. I had to go on what I was watching from the Purdue-Minnesota game because I think I know what Maryland has at this point. And I really like Maryland. I like Talia. I think he brings – I don't know if y'all watched their game against Michigan. He was fighting through an injury that entire second half, still played really well somehow. So really impressed with him. Think they got a lot of fight. But the fact that Purdue went and beat Minnesota, who was absolutely walloping everybody they played before them, impressed the heck out of me. So I'm going to actually take Purdue to win this ball game. I think Aiden O'Connell really shows that he is – I think a lot of people were saying preseason that he could have been top 2, 3 quarterback in the Big Ten. That might have been a little generous, but this is going to be one of those games where he shows that he's got that potential. And I like Purdue in this game. For some reason, it's speaking to me this week.
Okay. I'm going to pick Maryland to cover. I would pick them to cover even if it was 25. I don't know if you guys watched Purdue and Minnesota. It was borderline unwatchable.
It was.
Both of those teams were terrible. Purdue made a couple less mistakes. I think both teams had 4 turnovers, 10 penalties. I mean, it was awful.
Bad.
You couldn't even – there was no flow. And Minnesota, anytime they got anything going, fumbled the ball. So, I mean, I don't – it's hard to win. And Purdue going there when Minnesota was playing as well as they were, That's hard to do. Maryland is really stinking good, and I just don't know Purdue is. I'm going to take Maryland to cover pretty easily.
After hearing that, I wish I had changed my pick, but I'm not going to alter it based on what you said.
Mr.
Yeah, it's very persuasive, but I already chose, prior to the show that Purdue was going to continue to ride their high from Minnesota and pull the victory out. So I am taking the Boilermakers no longer as confidently as I was a few minutes ago, but I will take.
You really make your picks before the show?
Yeah, I don't want to be influenced, especially if I'm picking last.
Oh, I'm 100% influenced. All my picks come from mostly what those two say before me, whether I like it or not.
I have to justify
That's
being
so much preparation.
The last picker.
I'm proud of you, John.
Hey, he's in first place, so you can't mess with the formula.
No preparation.
All right. The other Big Ten game of the week: Iowa at Illinois. Illinois 3.5-point favorite. Over unders 35.5 points. So what does that mean? The predicted score is to be like 21-14.
30.
Yeah.
30.
No, it's 3.5. I'm not good at this. Justin,
it would be about 19-16 in favor of Illinois. Would be about, or 20-16, somewhere in that neighborhood.
All right, Dustin, what do you got for this one?
Yeah, I think Illinois is a really good football team. Having said that, I think that they're going to be awfully high after that win against Wisconsin. I think Iowa's defense is pretty good, and I think that they are due for another letdown game. So I don't think they're quite to that point where they can continue to roll. So I like the fact that this game's at home. I'm taking Iowa to win and to cover this game. I just think it took a lot out of Illinois to win that game last week. Now you got to play another really good team in Iowa, or a really good defensive team in Iowa. I don't know. Just for some reason, I just think that the momentum stops for the Illini.
Okay.
Doesn't agree. He says,
you want to tell me the spread again?
3.5 for Illinois.
Okay. Have you ever heard Brett Bielema speak?
I love it. I love this analysis.
Even keel. There is no high or low in his voice.
But he talks out of the side of his mouth like volumes.
How this football team is going to play this entire season. Very steady, very disciplined. And I see them riding straight over the Hawkeyes. So I've got Illinois winning this football game, I think, pretty handily. And I'm going to watch Brett Bielema walk off the sideline victoriously with not a smile on his face. I think that's how
that might be the quote of the day on the podcast. The analysis you just gave for the Illinois,
it's pretty good.
Bielema specifically. Mitchell,
yeah, I like that analysis. Almost persuaded me. I think that I was just really good on defense, and Illinois has been somewhat two-dimensional, but they rely a lot. What's the running back's name?
Chase Brown.
Chase Brown. Thank you. They rely a lot on him to get things going, and Iowa did a really good job against a multi-headed monster in Michigan, and I think there's a lot more talent on the outsides for Michigan. I think Illinois is going to have a really hard time moving the ball. Iowa would have a hard time moving the ball in routes on air, but I think like a 10-7 Iowa win, that would be my prediction. I think their defense gets a touchdown, and they somehow, maybe Illinois muffs a kick, so they kick a field goal. This will be a punt fest, would be my guess.
Yes.
I'll tell you what, I'm caught somewhere in between what Dustin said and what Joe said, where I feel like Illinois is trending toward that, to where like that dominance that he had when he was coaching at Wisconsin. But I also don't know if he's quite there yet. But at the same time, there's two factors that are keeping me to have faith with Illinois. I don't think Illinois covers, but I do think they're going to win this game. I think one reason, because they're going to be at home. I'm sure it's going to be a sold-out crowd. And two, correct me if I'm wrong, but has anybody scored more, other than Indiana, scored more than 10 points on Illinois this season? And when you look at how horrible Iowa's offense is there any way that Iowa – I mean, maybe Illinois won't score 10 points on this Iowa defense. It's such an extreme brand of football that Iowa plays that no other Big Ten team really can match, and it's so hard to understand. But with that being said, I think Illinois is, for one, going to be able to do enough on offense to – even if Iowa does hit that 10-point margin, Illinois will do enough to surpass that. So that's the long-winded version of me saying Illinois is going to win and not cover. So, yeah. I guess we're going to wrap things up here. Thanks again, as always, for listening. Again, it's homecoming. We're going to be back to do this again, no matter what happens in this Indiana game. Next week, we'll be talking about them going – what do they have? They have Maryland coming into town after this.
I'll be in the building, baby. I can't wait.
That's right. Mitchell's going to be in town. So, yeah, a lot to look forward to, no matter what happens. But thanks to Dustin, to Joe, to Mitchell, as always, for joining me and helping me figure out this mystery that is Indiana football. And, I mean, I don't know where they go from here. I guess the next thing to think about is what's going to happen in this Michigan game. So, thanks again. Oh, we don't have our – quickly, what's our comment for listeners?
Did anybody see the story about the D2 softball program that's run like Blue Mountain State?
No.
If you haven't, look it up. Pretty wild. If you're a Blue Mountain State fan, you'll like it.
There we go.
Comment Blue Mountain State if you managed to listen to this entire episode. Thanks again for listening, as always. Until next time.